AI is at the forefront. Are you at the cutting edge of AI? So are you using AI, Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever it is to say, how do I advance my analytics? That's the first thing, to say, what can I do to improve my analytics? The second piece becomes continuing to be very vocal, using your soft skills, developing it, and being an initiator, not a follower. So in times like this, saying, hey, what if we set up a daily meeting to talk about tariffs? And taking the ownership in the organization, because most people don't know what to do.
Before we start today's episode, I want to address a common challenge I have observed with FP&A professionals. While Excel skills are abundant, many are not fully tapping into Power BI's capabilities to enhance their financial analysis skills. With over a decade of experience in FP&A consulting and countless training sessions conducted, my most loved training by FP&A professionals, hands down, has been my Introduction to Power BI for Financial Analysts. So, for my loyal podcast listeners, I am giving you free access to it today. Check out the link in the description below to upgrade your FP&A skills today. Thank you. Hi Ron, many thanks for making the time to appear on our podcast FP&A Unboxed. Today we will be talking to you about driving FP&A innovations and insights and getting your perspective on the same. For our listeners, Ron is somebody who's been Director FP&A, VP FP&A, been Head of VP Finance Director, so has done CFO level roles within finance. And then now he's a founder of KiCT and author of the book Love Mondays. So again, a finance person being an author is something which is, you don't find very commonly. So tell us about that first, Ron. What does it take to become an author in finance and things like that?
Yeah, so I'm a really big believer in the concept of growth mindset, which is just being open to change and being excited by change, right? Whereas, many times as us finance professionals, many of us are introverted. I'm actually naturally introverted. Change is a little bit scary, right? But as I've gone through my life, I now know that change is really powerful. So where this book started, it's funny, I never used to read, but over the last 10 years, I've become a big book reader. And through my entrepreneurial journey, where I started my company 4 years ago, I've somewhat unintentionally surrounded myself with people who have written books. And so what's been interesting is, when you can see people who've done it, and then you realize we're all the same. We're all human beings. We all have 24 hours in a day. It takes a commitment. And so what I did was I committed to writing a book, and I committed to writing 30 minutes every day. I'm not sitting there for 5-6 hours a day, 30 minutes every day. And I believe every one of us can afford 10, 20, 30 minutes a day to dedicate to something that you really care about. So for me, I really love the concept of helping people love what they do, which is Love Mondays, whether it's FP&A or a different context. I've now found career, which I absolutely love, and I'm trying to share what did I do to get there. The middle section is about how do leaders help their teams love Mondays, and the last section is 20 people who I've called Monday Mavericks who love what they do. And, there's folks like Paul Barnhurst, you might know from FP&A, like he's a legend at FP&A. He's in there, right? Say, what routine does he have? What does he do to help them get out of bed every day and be excited by what they do? So that's what the book's all about.
Yeah, no, I definitely think I should read it. My wife always makes fun of me. She always says I'm one of the rare people who loves Monday. But again, because I love change. So I think every Monday is an opportunity to start something new, make some changes in the world in the coming 5 days that you get ahead of you. So yeah, maybe I should read the book as well.
Amazing.
Anyway, so could you share your journey into FP&A and how your early years experiences helped your career throughout, as you've got to from your early years career, because I know you've obviously started as an analyst and things like that to become a finance director and stuff. And then today writing books and providing consulting.
Yeah. So the truth is I graduated from university and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I had taken a commerce degree, and the only job I was able to get, I really struggled, was an accounting job at Hitachi. So I went into Hitachi, learned accounting, and it was a really good fundamental accounting role, but it was very busy at month end, and you would pretty much fall asleep in the middle of the month. There wasn't much to do. So it was a very kind of cyclical role. And at the same time, I always say it's fantastic that I started in accounting. And then about 2-3 years later, I was still doing the same role. So I eventually moved and I landed at Kraft Foods, food company. And it was such a fortunate change because what happened was I did a corporate finance role, which was also not FP&A. And then I got promoted into an FP&A analyst role. So
Wow.
then picture somebody who'd done almost 4 or 5 years of accounting, very static, black and white work, to now I'm sitting on a cross-functional table with marketing, sales, supply chain. And within the first month, we were presenting a pricing recommendation to the president of Kraft Canada. And talk about a fish out of water. I had no idea what was going on. It's like, why is marketing asking me for my opinion? Why is sales? But at the same time, I really started loving it to say, I'm working on a flavor of cream cheese, for example, and then I can see my product in the market. So I had what's called a baptism of fire at Kraft into FP&A, but it was a brilliant company where they really valued finance at the table, right? So it wasn't just run the numbers and give the P&L to somebody. Like, give me your opinion and present it. And I ended up spending 15 years at Kraft Foods. I did it FP&A as an analyst, I did it as a manager, and I did it as a director. So I saw the ground level and I saw the leadership level. And within those FP&A roles, we went to manufacturing facilities. We went across the country to work with sales. I went to commercial shoots. And so it was a brilliant environment, which I was a little bit lucky to land in there, but I got to become a business person. So, I went in as an accountant. I came out as a very strong business person with a heavy lens on finance. And then my remaining jobs were, I went to Campbell Soup, which is another big food company. We closed a plant over there. I went to Kruger Products, which does toilet paper and paper towels. During the pandemic, I'm working for a company that manufactured toilet paper, right? So then, so the business went like that. But then remember, the next year, it's going to come down. So I've been through some amazing business experiences where you learn so much about business, about people. And then about 4 years ago, I said, look, one of the things was I was very shy and I was very introverted by nature. And I've landed in a company which trained me how to be a confident business person. And I believe everybody can become a great FP&A person, but it takes a great combination of soft skills and technical skills, right? So I get a lot of joy in helping people around the world now say, look, I can take my brilliant technical skills, I can add great soft skills or presentation skills, and I can influence the business, right? And again, connect back to I can love my job. I can be like you, who's a rare commodity who loves their Mondays, right? So that's a little bit about my journey. And then, I continue to evolve and change. So me writing the book now has led to me doing a lot of talks for companies to go in and present to people, hey, what's my opinion and how do they engage their teams? And I'm living in Canada here, right, where we got tariffs, and I know the whole world is working with all this tariffs, but imagine FP&A people being at the forefront, leading their companies through these changes, right? It's a brilliant thing to say, how can we add value in this tumultuous time?
Yeah, I mean, today is more uncertain of an environment than anybody could ever imagine. Like US and Canada having a fallout is like, what the hell? How is that physically even possible, right? I mean, you pretty much have the biggest borders, shared borders, unmanned as well. A lot of it is unmanned because I mean it's such a long border. How are you going to man all of that border essentially?
Yeah, and at the same time, like I think it's also having a perspective where we will get through this time. Of course, it's a very crazy time, and people working ridiculous hours and trying to figure out on a daily basis what actions to take. It's not weekly, it's not monthly. Every single day there's a new news, and many of my friends are now CFOs. They have to make decisions daily. Do I cover my commodities or forex, or do I price my business? This is daily discussions, not so. The whole game has changed, right? From COVID to inflation to tariffs. The pace just continues to increase, right?
Every morning, Trump uncle wakes up. We are all worried. Now, what is he going to say? It's literally that, right? Because I mean, all the tariffs conversations went on, and then suddenly one morning he just stood up and said, "Okay, 90 days pause." Now suddenly all the stock markets are gone in the other direction. So hey, yeah, it is a bit very very uncertain at the minute, and you're right. I mean, how can we as finance people and business-minded commercial FP&A people help business make better decisions in such an uncertain environment? Actually, this makes our roles more critical, not less, in fact, if anything. So, yeah. So what were some of the pivotal moments or challenges in your career that redefined your approach to FP&A? I mean, again, as you said, right, you started 4 or 5 years in accounting. And first of all, I have to share, I've done first 3 to 4 years in my life also as accounting. As much as I did not enjoy that, as much I enjoy FP&A more, I think that helped FP&A career. But I'd like to get your perspective, because now when you spend 4 or 5 years doing your accounting and your debits and credits and your IFRS and things like that, right? I mean, how has that helped in your FP&A career and approach to FP&A?
Yeah. So I work for many big companies, and most big companies are mainly P&L focused, right? They have a whole treasury department or something that works on cash flow. So the good thing about FP&A professionals who have accounting is you understand the impact to the balance sheet and the cash flow statement and the day-to-day, right? So I was able to translate what I learned and really help out my cross-functional, my marketing and sales and supply chain people. So I think it's absolutely pivotal to have an accounting base. But then the joy becomes, okay, I can use that and really impact the business on the finance side with the cross-functional team. So it's a very important skill set that I have, that you have as well, to say, how do I understand the whole picture, all three statements?
But how easy was it for you to make the switch, right? Because sometimes I have, not me personally, but I've met people who get stuck so much in the accounting, debit and credit that they struggle to make the switch to business finance thinking and stuff like that. Take a little bit larger picture view rather than the journal entry view of life.
I've seen that a lot, where people who are very black and white, like it's yes or no, right or wrong, like those type of decisions. FP&A, I like to say, you're always playing in the gray, right? You're always in a bit of an uncertain situation. So the folks who have been successful for me transitioning from accounting to FP&A, as you said, have been able to take the bigger picture, have been able to deal well with uncertainty, and who able to deal with different scenarios and knowing that we'll never have the right answer. So for example, when you build a FP&A budget, a budget in any company, it's always going to be wrong, but it comes down to what are your assumptions. So it's people who are able to really understand. Like, think about today's environment where we just talked about every day different. So where we started this conversation, people are okay with change and being able to adapt on the fly and make decisions on a daily basis, and be in the same room and sit around a table and make a decision. Those are the people, to me, are going to be very, very successful, right? Who are able to thrive during this challenging time.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, imagine the people who made the budget in December, right, in October, November for 2025, and and we are sitting here with tariffs. And then again, even in February, March, when they said, okay, now tariffs are going to come, and therefore they made a reforecast based on that assumption. Now 90 days pause on that. So now what do you do with that? So,
yeah.
tariffs come, tariffs go.
And it's multi-layered, right? So many of my friends are CFOs. And so the thing is, like, let's say tariffs in Canada get implemented. What will happen is sometimes the commodity price will go down. So there's some, and then the foreign exchange as well. So there's multiple factors you're dealing with. And again, the ability to go higher and say, I'm going to use the 80-20 rule. I'm going to make the decisions without all perfect information is so critical, right? Otherwise, you just get paralyzed. Like, there's too many things to consider.
Yeah, and as you said in the previous sentence, right, where it's as long as the finance people and the CFO is able to sit with his colleagues in a room and say, okay, you know what, next 4 weeks, this is the plan. After 4 weeks, we don't know. We'll figure it out in 4 weeks' time. I mean, you need to be able to actually work in that agile fashion in this uncertain environment. Otherwise, it is very, very difficult to work. So, no, completely agree. So what is the one major lesson you learned in your FP&A journey that continues to influence your leadership style even today, right? I mean, when people talk about leadership, again, I do feel leadership styles are very, very important, because the few podcasts that we've recorded so far as well, right? We talk about culture and leadership and things like that, because that is the ground on which your entire business is laid. You may have the best strategy, but if your culture is not correct and your leadership is not correct, it's not going to work. So what is your take on, what are the lessons you've learned in your FP&A career for leadership?
Yeah, so I've worked at companies where FP&A is at the table with, cross-functional partners making decisions, like we talked about, like Kraft. I've also worked at other companies where FP&A is a little bit more in the background, and you're sending P&Ls to the marketing or sales people and stuff like that. So I think my big lesson is FP&A individuals can be at the table helping make business decisions. And what that takes is building confidence, like building the confidence to be at the table and, again, developing your soft skills, your communication skills to be okay debating with your cross-functional stakeholders. I was told early in my career, I didn't have executive presence. I was told, hey, you're too quiet in meetings. That's going to hold you back. And I actually worked very hard to develop those skills. And now I'm at the point where I can speak to CEOs toe to toe directly with a very honest conversation. So I think, my stumbling block was I was shy and you didn't have a lot of confidence. But then once I worked on it with coaches and mentors and other people, I'm now able to have presence. So I would say where the big lesson is really work on soft skills as well, in addition to the technical skills, in order to be right at the forefront of the business, right? And FP&A individuals are the only other function that has the full 360-degree view of the business. So, right? So GMs and CEOs and presidents tell me they rely heavily on FP&A because they see the whole business and they have the financial skill set, right? Which is really important.
And you're the eyes and ears of those CEOs and general managers, right? So I remember my good old days as well. My GM would almost rely on me okay, I saw you were talking to so-and-so person in, the canteen, or you were having a coffee with so-and-so person. What did she exactly tell you? Because again, those people will not go to the GM or the CEO and tell them stuff, right?
Yeah.
But when you sit down with them, you can get their real thoughts and their real understanding of what is going on, and therefore actually help the business make better decisions as well. So yeah, it's about how influential we make ourselves in the business, I guess.
Yeah, and just building on that topic. So the way I used to do that is I used to spend a lot of time outside my cubicle or office, meaning, as you talked about the canteen, but going to the manufacturing facilities, going out to sales, going out to marketing. And two things. First, you learn the actual business. You're actually really understanding the real story. And the second is you build these relationships where you can have a quick call and say, hey, I really need to get the real story here. Why is this customer down? And instead of hearing the political cleansed version, you actually know what's going on in the business. Or if you go to a manufacturing facility and you actually see the lines, they talk about line 2 in a given factory. Okay, I can picture it. I know what's going on. And instead of it being an abstract theoretical thing, it's real. I've been there. I understand this is why we need to put in capital, for example, because I've seen how manual it is.
I completely agree. I was basically doing a business transformation in a business as well. And I was sharing coffees and teas with the warehouse manager, literally sitting on the steps of the warehouse. And he used to make fun of me, you're a weird finance person. No finance person comes and sits on the steps of the warehouse. I'm like, I'm not precious. I don't care, man. I'll sit where I need to sit. But then again, you get an understanding. What do they stock behind? What is stock in the front? How do they plan the warehouse stocking? And things like that. And therefore, when you were doing the revaluation of the balance sheet, I called up the guy all of this is the balance sheet. This telling me all of this is worth value, but it's been here for 4 years, 7 years. I don't think this is worth any value. Am I wrong? He well, officially you are wrong. Officially it has value, but unofficially you are not wrong. This is all junk we are just holding on to and things like that. Then you get an idea, right? And then you can provide an honest feedback to the board and to the CFO of, look, mate, this needs to be written off and let's get on with that. Exactly. So how can FP&A leaders foster stronger partnerships with other business units to drive business growth, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it connects really well to our previous conversation here, which is it takes an investment in building relationships with people and getting to know WIFT, what's in it for them. So really understanding what's important to them. So if you build that trust, you build the relationships, then if you listen first, then people will start listening to you. And so if you make a recommendation, so your example of going and understanding the warehouse and really going deep in it, or me going to a manufacturing facility, when you have that knowledge, then your recommendations become that much better and that much more realistic. Cross-functional stakeholders will take you much more seriously. First, you've invested time building the relationship. You've invested time learning the business. And when you make a recommendation, it's not just based on an Excel spreadsheet. It's based on an Excel spreadsheet and understanding the business. And then the other thing that happens is your confidence gets much higher because you know it's the right decision. So for you and your example, maybe we need to start writing this thing off faster because you know the answer. It's not a question mark. It's a yes, this is what we need to do. And you become more decisive, much more important, much more influential in the business. But it takes that investment.
Yeah, no, of course. I think I completely agree on that one. I think cross-functional collaboration can take a lot of time, a lot of tea, and a lot of coffee is the way I put it.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. Can you share an example where FP&A insights directly influenced a major business decision in your experience?
Yeah. So there's this product we had, and we had a 90% share of it. Okay. And what the marketing team said, okay, we want to expand into a new line of business to build that brand. Okay. And what they came back to was they came with a beautiful presentation proposal. This is going to be the next big thing in that category. And marketers are very good at that. But what finance and supply chain said was, instead of investing $5 million in capital, which the marketing team was, let's invest less than $1 million. Let's prove the product out. And if it does well, we'll then build a brand new line. And what was amazing about this situation was we saved the company over $4 million there, right? Because instead of investing the whole amount right away, we said, okay, let's bring our business hat to this to say, what if this product doesn't work in market? And of course, marketing doesn't want to hear that, but you built the relationship. They know you're in it for the long haul. They trust you. You came up with that solution. And if the product had worked, we would have invested, but it didn't work. So again, I have many examples earlier in my career where I didn't challenge and I didn't play devil's advocate. So in this case, we said, okay, let's do the right thing for the business, which is smaller investment, prove out the product. If it does well, we're going to invest more. So I'm really proud of that. And I have many other examples like that to say, okay, let's find a solution that works for everybody, not just the loudest voice, right?
No, the biggest bully in the room.
For me now in my career, I bullies in a room I'm just not impacted. I can, even if the person's more senior, my last role was a corporate finance director, senior director, and I had VPs and the CEO in the room. And oftentimes I'd be challenged, but I would just be, okay, here's the fact. I see it. And that becomes a very important skill set. Without getting personal, you can still challenge in a fact-based, hey, I'd love to ask this question. Or, hey, can I challenge that for a minute? I want to just address this. And you're doing it in a way that's not personal. So that skill set, finance people, FP&A people, CFOs who have that, so successful.
Absolutely. I think, and that also comes from experience and confidence, right? Because once you know you are confident about your own skill set, then you are happy to remove your personal emotion out of it and position a challenge on purely factual basis, which is very critical, I think. So what do you believe are the key attributes of a successful FP&A team in a rapidly changing business environment, like we've been talking about, right? Currently, the rapidly changing business environment. So what are the key attributes of a successful FP&A team, according to you?
I think it's a really good combination of technical and soft skills. So example, AI is at the forefront. Are you at the cutting edge of AI? So are you using AI, Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever it is to say, how do I advance my analytics? That's the first thing, to say, what can I do to improve my analytics? The second piece becomes continuing to be very vocal, using your soft skill, developing it. And I think being an initiator, not a follower. So in times like this, saying, hey, what if we set up a daily meeting to talk about tariffs? And taking the ownership in the organization, because most people don't know what to do. So imagine you're a CEO and the FP&A lead comes to you and says, hey, I want to establish a daily meeting every day for 30 minutes and I'm going to lead it. Like, think about that, right? And then the second piece of that becomes you need great data, right? So think about how important data is today, where let's say you've got 1,000 products and some are sourced from UK and Canada and India, and it's like, okay, how can I identify all my products, where they're sourced from in real time and run a scenario? So think about how complicated that can be, especially if the systems environment is kind of primitive.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, again, that is the reason why I think one of my LinkedIn posts did really, really well. When I was talking about the Suez Canal, I don't know if you know, 3 or 4 years back, there was a ship stuck in the Suez Canal. And right, no finance person would have that in their financial model, that our supply chain comes from a Swiss canal, and a Swiss canal gets stopped. Next
Yeah.
3 weeks, we're not going to have any product and things like that. But those are things that we need. You would only be aware of the possible risk if you had cross-functional collaboration, then you had known enough people in the business, then you'd hear about these things much faster as they happen, just because you are much more in control. So yeah, I mean, I agree completely. And taking initiative, I mean, again, I always say, either lead the change or be led. There is no other way. So as a FP&A people, we should lead the change, because otherwise we will be led to change. I mean,
Exactly.
there is no steady force. So you have to either lead it or you have to be led. There is no questions around. There is nothing around that one. So how do you approach a challenge of implementing change in FP&A teams? So have you led change in FP&A, and how would you approach changing the culture? Again, you talked about data. So again, let's expand upon that a little bit more. Process improvement, technology implementation, or anything like that in FP&A teams, essentially.
Yeah, I've been involved in many changes in many organizations, and I think it comes down to leadership behavior. Okay, so with any change, what I would do is really overinvest in change management and in showing the benefits of the change. So let's get everybody together. Let's show them why this is going to help us. And let's really invest that to show every single person on the team how it's going to make their job easier, better, faster, more fun, whatever you want to do. And then really have a close eye to who are the people in your department and how do I have to help them through this change as much as possible. And I went through this massive change at one of the organizations, and we actually had an HR person full-time on that team. And what she was doing is really assessing who is a change leader, who's okay, who's in the middle, and who are the resistors. And then being very strategic to say, okay, who's willing to come along on this change? And sometimes you actually have to make some changes to say those 3 people were resisting, or 2 people, maybe they need to be put on some other project or even not part of the organization, because that's very important with any change in an organization.
Yeah, no, I completely agree on that one as well. I have been down that road. But again, I don't know about your experience. I'd like to just share some stats. In my world, I think out of 100 people, 100%, 5% people can be change leaders. Almost 80 to 90% will be change followers. So if you lead them, they will follow you. They will not lead it themselves, but they will follow you along. And then the troublemakers are hardly less, 5 or 10% at best, which then you have to manage as you go along, essentially. Is that it is? What's your thoughts on those the statistics you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's people who jump out and say, I want to lead. And again, that middle pack they're open to change, but they need guidance and help and stuff like that. So yeah, and hopefully that number starts to increase, right? As change becomes so much more common every year, like, COVID and inflation and tariffs and all that. It's normal, right? So change initiatives are much more in our everyday than they were before. So hopefully that number starts increasing with our ability to change.
Yeah, the change becomes more normal, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, it is normal.
Yeah, no, sounds good. Okay, I have to ask you my 3 standard questions. Warned you before. I'm asking these 3 standard questions to everybody. So where do you think is the future of FP&A in 3 to 5 years? And you're not allowed to say AI. So in 3 to 5 years, where do you think FP&A will be in the global environment? What will the role look like? What will the people be doing and things like that? And you can't say AI. I mean, like, seriously. I mean, AI seems to be everywhere. So let's not talk about AI.
Yeah. No, like, I mean, AI is an enabler, but I'd say FP&A will be even more important because, again, you're making decisions on the fly. You're making decisions in a rapidly changing environment. So who has the best skill set to do that? It's FP&A, because you see the whole business, 360-degree view. You have the data, you have the people, and you have the soft skills to, as you say, have the coffee at the warehouse or go out. So it's a huge opportunity. I think FP&A is going to be more and more important, right? Because the CEO may not have the finance background, for example. And so who has that brilliant experience? It's FP&A. So I think it's a bright future. And I've talked about it a few times. I think it's that combination of technical skills, because I can't say AI, and the soft skills, being able to communicate very effectively continues to be very important.
Cool. Perfect. What is the one thing that most FP&A functions need help with today and now, to help them be better strategic finance business partners, you think?
I think it's being very nimble and being willing to change and go away from standard processes, right? So for example, a budget might take 6 months in some big companies. How do we get that down to 1 month? How do we be open to we need to change and change fast? So I think to me, it's ability to change, having a growth mindset, and being able to work fast with more of an 80-20 approach as opposed to 90-10 or perfection.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, ultimately, agile is the way forward, right? So, hey, embrace the Pareto principle and let's go move on. For someone who is looking to move into FP&A or has just started into FP&A, what skills and certifications do you think they should be looking to get to be successful in FP&A?
Yeah, so there's official FP&A designations, which I'm sure you shared with your audience. But there's also, there's training courses. There's amazing people around the world who are doing this training, right? So I know you probably do this. I know Asif Masani in India, myself and Paul Barnhurst teach people around the world. Christine Wittig. So there's lots of people on LinkedIn who actually have FP&A courses to get there. That's one way. There's FP&A books. I know my buddy Asif Masani has written a specific FP&A book of how do you transition from accounting to FP&A. So maybe you can put that in the links. I mean, that's a great resource. And he interviewed many, many people. I think I'm in that book as well in terms of what does it take to transition. I think some of what we've talked about, being able to play in the gray and not being too focused on the black and white, all these skill sets come into play, right? So I think it's anyone can do it, but it takes a lot of work to think differently.
Yeah, no, but by the way, let me be very clear. I don't teach FP&A. So anybody listening to this, don't reach out to me for learning FP&A. Reach out to Asif Masani. I really do think those guys in India do a fantastic job. Or reach out to Ron and Paul Barnhurst, please. I don't teach FP&A. I love FP&A, but I don't know. I struggle to understand how I teach somebody to be present in a conversation. Because for me, in FP&A, all I have always done in my career is I'm present in the room. I'm listening to the conversation. And then at the right time, I know this is where I need to now open my mouth and I need to do something about it. Right? I mean, that to me has been success in FP&A anyways. Cool. Thank you so much, Ron. Thanks a lot. I think it's been a wonderful session. I think people will really learn a lot out of this conversation for sure. So thank you so much for making the time. We really appreciate it. And I hope to have you again and on the show, as well as wish you best wishes with your book.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate being on the show.